Hello, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the AdQuick Madvertising podcast, a podcast that explores the intersection of technology, culture, marketing, all of the things that you care about. Today, we have a special guest. We have a personal friend of mine, Douglas Boneparth. He is the president of Bonafide Wealth. He is a financial personality, frequently appearing on trad media and new media to talk all things finance. He's a blogger and writer, all around great guy, probably one of the funniest people on the internet. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Oh, Adam, that was so kind of you. How could you?
I mean, Doug, we talk pretty much every day around lunch and basically have kind of an informal podcast between us on various topics. So
No, that's the real podcast in my mind.
it's all the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. So today I brought you on. Why do I have a financial person on a marketing podcast? And the answer to that is simple. Doug is probably top 1% marketer on the planet, even though he works running a financial advisory firm. And so I think that's really interesting because, marketing, just like finance, in finance, there can be people who are not professionally trained to work in finance who outperform professional hedge fund managers and institutions and figure out how to do great things for themselves. I'm not advising that you do that, but those people can exist, that sort of outlier talent. And Doug, without necessarily having a formal marketing background, I would say is better at marketing than most marketers. He's a better marketer than me. I'll just say it. He's, I wouldn't put him in like a corporate situation to like write press releases because he's not going to do that. But just in terms of understanding the mechanics of the internet, of understanding narrative online, he gets it, right? He's like kind of the person you want in your marketing team where they stay on top of what's happening in the world. And so, one of the first things I wanted to talk about is this a reasonable thing that if you're a startup or small business owner that you could expect or even want from one of the founders or owners of the company to do what you do, Doug, which is sort of lead conversation and lead narrative daily as just something you do in addition to your work, however long it takes?
Oh, man. I don't think so, because even if you have the skills to do it, the time it takes to like figure out your industry and pair it to a marketing strategy and techniques that work for you, it just takes time. So I think it's more, yeah, you got to have the talent to do it and the know-how, but I think you just also need time in the industry, and there's nothing you can do to speed that up, right? Like I grew up I had an edge. I grew up in personal finance. So I had I had this advantage by the time I was like, oh, I need to grow my own business. Like I'm done learning how to run a practice. I'm done learning forms and writing plans and doing trades. Like I need to go get business now. And you're like, all right, well, I need to market. You want to develop business, you need to market. And the good part was like I had 10 years of experience. I kind of knew how to take whatever the trends were and apply it to my industry. So, that's my view on it. It's kind of hard to expect someone just to kind of hit the ground running. Like, hey, we hired you for marketing. We want you to figure it all out right away.
Yeah, like you couldn't hire a marketing manager to do what you do for biz dev for Boneparth Wealth.
No, I not only couldn't, I probably wouldn't. Like, I don't know if I would ever have someone create the voice for the firm, which is essentially my voice. It's Bonafide Wealth. Like that stuff actually scares me a little bit, and there's also something about it's just not authentic, I think it's very difficult to replicate, the principles or the founders' ideas and culture around that thing they created to people below it, unless sometimes maybe giving equity to someone will trigger something in them, but it often doesn't.
Yeah, and I guess you guys punch way above your weight in marketing, but I think when startup founders, even like yourself, do bring on marketing, I think the answer is scale. Like, you guys are a boutique shop, you have like X number of clients you want, and they can all be super high quality and you can get that. But I think another founder in your shoes, even if they're really good at the internet, will get to a point they don't want to, write email marketing automation flows. They don't necessarily want to manage the brand social. They don't want to run paid search. And at some point, I guess, it does make sense to have a higher, even if for like what you're doing, which is like a white glove offering, you might not want that.
It's a good point. I think for public facing stuff, I really want to have the reins, and I'm kind of trained up for that. I did study public relations for whatever that's worth. It did come in handy in terms of working with media and press. But there are a lot of things that are part of the marketing apparatus that like I dabbled in, but realized like I'm not going to be able to go deep. And like SEO is one of those things. Like years ago, I came to the conclusion that like, wow, commanding web traffic and getting all of these appearances and the stuff we're writing, like it needs to be optimized to get that traffic to the site for the purpose of filling out, hey, I want a consultation. Like I want to do business with you. I could do that at a very high level, but as far as being like spending the time I think it took to really get granular with something like search engine optimization, I had, very quickly figured out, all right, that's something I'm not going to be able to do. So it's interesting how stuff like that, like it's one of the few areas I've ever paid money to bolster my marketing efforts. I'm not sure I've paid a cent, anywhere else. I'm sure there are a few exceptions there, but for, hey, I'm a PR firm. We can get you on a TV show? No, thanks. Like I got this, fam. Like we can do that. We can build a network of reporters and producers, writers and editors, and say, hey, I have some ideas that might be good for your outlet, and I can be a voice to that, and I can speak to that. Would you be interested in that? Like, what? You want to help me with a story or something that's interesting? Absolutely. Give me some lines. There's your first lines. Now do that. You can scale that. Now do that 1,000 times. Do that 1,000 times. You're starting to figure out which like keywords you're saying. You're getting those backlinks. You're actually getting a lot of good internet mojo, for lack of a better word, that starts to tilt the scale in your favor. And wow, look at this. You got traffic coming your way. I saw that happen. I'm like, we got to actually invest in that. Right? Like this is where some money needs to go, because this is a clear relationship between $1 in, 100 come out, or 1,000 come out.
Yeah, you're kind of interesting because in the startup world, at least in like the Silicon Valley startup world, Silicon Valley was always kind of in a cold war with trad media, in the sense that in a lot of cases they were aggregating, different stories together to, be this thing that sits in front of media content, or they were building platforms or streaming platforms on top of, everything was aggregation or deaggregation. And so, but they always kind of work together. But Elon kind of turned it into a hot war where he's now cursing out the Disney CEO, which is probably not the best move, but I understand what he's doing from a firebrand perspective. But what this has done is, in a lot of cases, there are tech founders who are like, no, we don't need any media at all to tell our story. We're just going to use social media, blog, go directly to users. But you're one of the people who I think you do a good job both in new forms of media and in traditional media. So I don't think it's necessarily super wise, if you're not a billionaire, to start wars with a channel of distribution. Like we might not watch, cable TV, but there's plenty of other people who still watch it during the day. So, another conversation I've had with a lot of guests is just, look, everything is so fragmented now from a media perspective that really the only thing that matters is distribution. And if you're a startup or even a company, just say yes and have conversations with people and like ignore all of the polarizing nonsense and like all the political stuff, and just get your company and your face in front of people. Like all publicity is good publicity, right?
You took the words out of my mouth. It's say yes. Say yes to everything and all the things. Like if you're getting an opportunity to get your brand and your name out there on a platform, I mean, that's why I said yes to this podcast. That's okay. Say yes, Adam. No, and actually, no jokes aside, whether it was you, a friend, someone I didn't know, I come from that place of yes, because I know the more hits I get and the more opportunities I get to put my name out there or work that internet magic, the better it's going to be for me. Now, granted, time is a factor here, but for startups who are, I think you have the time to do that. And I think you should be dedicating time, obviously, to marketing efforts. That's what you have to do. I mean, this is mandatory stuff. I don't really think this is optional. And if you have that mentality, like I have to do this, like it is, if I don't do it, my business doesn't grow. You're not going to be picky about where you go. And I also or where you show up. I also think that like traditional media and new media, like I think they go hand in hand. I think it's a little silly that there's like now, I mean, it's because of tribalism, man. You gotta pick a team these days, right? But like if you're a business starting out, like you're not trying to pick a team. You're just trying, you're trying to, you'll take any team that's willing to have you. And if both teams are like, hey, do something with us, you're going to say, sign me up, put me in, coach. So not only do they go hand in hand, but I don't think you can afford to say no to anyone. So come from a place of yes. Like what's the worst that's going to happen? Obviously don't choose places that would tarnish your name. Yeah, don't go on something that will, really do harm to your brand. But most people that are interested in speaking with you want to talk to you about something that's worth your while.
Yep. I think your attitude says everything. And I think I saw a quote from like Morgan Housel or someone who said, you don't see too many successful perma-bears, like people who are just like doomers about everything and say no to things. And so like your sort of optimism bias is always refreshing to me. But on the other hand, I wouldn't call you like a Gary V like hype bro, because you're also interesting, and along with that, I think you're one of the few people that's genuinely funny online. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I think humor is such a potent it's an advertising tenet. Great ads we love have humor. Humor is a way to make cold intros to someone you don't know for a B2B business deal, to use a new service. That's how else do you approach someone at a party in person than with a joke? Like what a great way to break the ice with people. Sorry for cliched, but you're really good at it, and it seems to come effortlessly for you. I guess my question is, should not just founders and business owners, but like, is this something all marketers need to kind of get, at least at the surface level? Can you even teach humor? Like how do I, if I'm like a marketing manager who's watching, you tweet or watching, say, Wendy's roast their fans and get a ton of attention. Sorry about their pricing issue this week. How do you teach that, or can you not?
I think there are plenty of teachable elements of it. I also think there's a part of it that just comes within someone who is funny and has wit and is quick like that. For example, humor has always been a part of my life. Like, this isn't a recent development. It shouldn't be a stretch to think that like, well, is Doug just funny as of late, or like, what was Doug like as a kid? No, I was still trying to make you laugh. There's something about providing someone with an entertainment quality without, necessarily becoming the class clown that, is good for building friendships, good for navigating social situations, and apparently good for building business as well. So like, I don't know. I always just grew up a funny, kind of awkward kid in some ways, and managed to be able to like get the wit and timing down of things. It didn't really come from watching comedians or anything like that. I had some pretty funny family members around me, so I guess that was helpful. But really, if I dive even deeper into it, it's probably more of a coping mechanism than it really is anything. One of the things, Adam, you and I talk about this all the time. When you have like a brain in your head, you see things that maybe you and interpret things maybe you rather not. It's not always. I appreciate you calling me an optimist, and I am. But it's not always like a rainbow and sunshine world out there. Where, and certainly with social media and I would say more traditional media, like you're constantly bombarded with like really sad and depressing themes in the news cycles over and over and over again. Shit, I gotta laugh that off. Like otherwise it builds up and you get depressed and you get sad. And I'm not here for that.
Yeah.
So, you know,
That was a loaded question, by the way, because I was reading an interview with where basically an HBR journalist asked Seinfeld why didn't he hire McKinsey consultants on the show so they could write more. And so I do think you're right. Like, you probably can't just outsource a sense of humor. I think it's something that comes with observations of the world and building a personality. So you kind of, I actually think companies end up hiring for their brand on the marketing side, because when they're interviewing, I think they're unconsciously deciding if this person's creativity, all marketers are creatives, vibes with the company culture. And that's not written on a web page. That's like kind of an intangible that AI and whatever else isn't going to be able to, your HR tool isn't going to be able to tell you if this person's like the right fit.
Well, listen, speaking about using wit and coping mechanisms to create like, an online presence that has a lot to do with, cynical humor or, self-deprecating humor, which is kind of like my calling card when it comes to like, at least what I do on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. I struggled with going down that road because I work in personal finance. There's this air about it. You have to be respectful and mindful, and you got your colleagues there. The idea of this financial advisor isn't someone that's going to be, cracking jokes and making memes and shit posting, on the internet. And my fear was like, am I going to do damage to my credibility and my reputation by being my funny self? And then I remembered like everything I built and the clients that I have and the interactions that I have with them is I still use that humor.
Your risk is sounding like AI or sounding like a warmed over, piece of toast. That's like the number one marketing risk is blending in. So you're absolutely right.
I would drop these same jokes, right? And granted, up to a limit. Like what's funny is like in real life, I curse a lot, and I'm not gonna drop bombs all over this podcast here, but just
dad joke Doug curses. Wow.
Yeah, who would have thought? But like if I'm having a normal friendly conversation like you and I have over lunchtime, like I'm just talking like I normally talk. It's not an excessive use of curse words, but ironically, like online, like I really don't curse. Like it's just this weird thing of like there has to be still some level of decorum with what I put out there. I still wanted to come off professional. Like, how do you be a professional shit poster? How do you thread the needle of these jokes and still keep your, professionalism about you? And I just figured it, you got to trust yourself. I think like I would never talk this way in real life and I would still tell those jokes. So why am I worried about doing that online? And
I think Elon and Trump have moved the goalposts so far that nothing you could say on your absolute worst day could possibly get you canceled. Like Doug at his worst is not even close to the sociopaths that are at the absolute top of various hierarchies. So I don't worry about you.
Doug at his worst online. I don't even know if that like is possible or exists. I'm sure like, in the most sensitive of moments through like COVID, I think there was something that, just got misconstrued or interpreted, like a joke I ran for the fourth time, but on the fourth time, someone took like offense to it. Like, and I was just like, wow, that's an ABCD test, like A through C were all bangers. And then D, like the same thing, like actually went down the wrong vein. I guess that risk is always there. I found that one fascinating, but came out unscathed,
Yeah. So one thing a lot of our listeners suffer from or have to deal with is toxicity online. Even just by a lot of people listening post to a company brand account, and day in and day out, they have to listen to people complaining about, probably things beyond their control. And of course they want to help if there's like a link to what they can't access, or if they're, working for an airline and they're trying to get a ticket. But in a lot of cases, it's dealing with people at their worst when they reply online. And so I'm curious, because you're always such a cool head online, like, how are you so good at kind of not letting the chaos of being, very online, extremely online, like get to you and harm your mental health?
Yeah, I think there's two approaches to that. The first one is you got to train yourself to a certain degree to handle that. I remember early on in building my online presence, that there would be plenty of trolls in the particular like financial Twitter space, and it would get to me. Like it would. And I remember telling my wife, like, showing him, like, look at this. And she'd be like, look. And I give her a lot of credit. She's like, listen, you don't have to do this, right? You don't have to build this thing and subject yourself to this. Or you need to right now learn and figure out how to deal with that. So at first ask the question, do you want this? And the answer was yes, I want this. I want to continue to grow this. I want to continue to have this presence and see where it takes me. So she's like, all right, so figure it out. So I think blocking and muting and, controls that platforms give you are super important. Don't think twice about if you have the option to remove, someone's voice from your feed, do it. If it's going to save you the energy and anguish of having to read someone's filth or garbage, get rid of it. There's nothing wrong with that. And then two, the training of yourself is, remember, like, these are, I create the framework of, especially when it comes to like an anonymous user on the internet, a keyboard warrior, like, you're better than that, right? They don't even have the courage to put their real identity out there. So what are you worried about?
Yeah, I'm so calloused from the forum days of the 90s that people say crazy things to me, and it just like it doesn't register with me. In fact, it's probably so far on the spectrum. Like in my real life, someone can say something to me and I just don't even care.
Yeah, if someone said something like that in real life, I'd be so entertained by it. I'd be like,
right, it'd be insane. I'd be like, it's incredible.
Yeah, like you're wow, that you're not a non-playing character. Like who sent you these lines? Like, what do we do? What button do I press on the remote here to address this situation? The second thing is, algos are smart. Like they really do cater to you and figure out what you want to consume. And it's a little insidious because I think the more time that I've put into a particular algorithm, in this case, X, which is, my biggest platform, it really does start to tailor what you want to see and who you want to hear. So between blocking and muting and building yourself up to have a mental framework of having to deal with it, and really training your algo, to pay attention to what you care about. I'll be honest with you, even, from the Dorsey days to the Elon days, like people are like, oh, Twitter is such a different place now. Guys, it's not. It's really not. And I get it. You're seeing, like, your algo's feeding you stuff you rather not see. Then explain to me how I've been able to train mine to show me only really the things that I'm interested in, do want to see. A lot of the stuff that's negative and would have bothered me years ago is completely filtered away at this point. And I'm under the impression that, like, I trained it up that way.
Yeah. And another thing that people don't get is that Twitter has always been closest to a pure web form than any other social media, which is, always been a little bit less raw and less real. And so if you're like a proper poster, like you're never going to want to post too much to like LinkedIn or Facebook. It's like being in the kiddie pool or playing bowling with bumper lanes, right? It's just not fun for a certain personality type. And I understand completely why a lot of people like wouldn't want to be on like the basically like Thunderdome-esque place that Twitter is.
There are main actors and side. Right. It's almost like a play, right? You got to figure out the who's who and what and standings. But like, to your point, but I will say this, like, you and I live on that platform. We live on X. That's our mainstay. And I have plenty of friends who don't, and they have, hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram or, whatever platform, or Twitch, or they're a streamer.
Gotta feel bad for them.
I feel like, when I'll take Instagram, for example, like, you think X is crazy dumpster fire, dude. Like, I remember when Threads came out, and I remember like just trying to get revved up on Instagrams. Some of those comment sections make, X, if you think X is a dumpster on fire, this is the dumpster on fire floating down the river of fire, right? Like, it really depends on where you're consuming and where you're posting, but like, no platform's perfect. But I wanted to say this, like, if you find that your audience is on Facebook of all places, or Instagram or Threads or whatever, then that's where you're going to be, right? And don't let Adam or me, who are in love with our platform, of choice, interfere with your successful marketing and attempt to market on your platform of choice. I think you got to know where your audience is and attack that thing.
All right, I'm gonna have to edit this because Dash is barking. Let me clap. It's okay. God damn it, Dash. Usually it's okay. I can edit this out. Usually Megan is here when I'm doing podcasts and can stop him. Hang on, I'm gonna go put on his collar. One second. Hold that thought.
Collar him up.
God damn it.
Now you're muted.
I need to clap so I know where to edit an audio. It gives a little spike. So I want to switch gears a little bit, Doug. Something that's happened in the tech sector, I don't know how much you've been paying attention to this, but we've never had like perma-bears, or our equivalent now of perma-bears in tech are these AI doomers. And they come in a bunch of flavors, either thinking AI is going to take all of the jobs and we're not going to be prepared for that, to AI is going to brick the universe and end the species, or create a virus that's going to kill everyone, right? Yeah. So we've never had this in the tech sector. And to me, I wrote a post on this. I think it parallels nicely the financial perma-bears, where everything is always ending. We're screwed, the zero hedge-esque people of the world. And I was wondering, like, if you're in tech, like, I've been basically encouraging people not to fall victim to this mindset, because ultimately AI is not going to brick the species. Ultimately, AI is going to create more jobs. We've had AI in things like, Google Maps, and in search, and in, algorithmic feeds, and in ads for a long time. And of course, it's just another hype cycle. But I'm curious, you, not a financial perma-bear, do you come across a lot of like the perma-bears in your day-to-day, or is this just like a media narrative that you have to deal with clients? I asked the question because I'm curious how you handle perma-bears, so marketers can hear how they should handle like an AI doomer, or someone who's like overly negative about technology.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to work with them, in the first place. They're real people, but like, do you come across them in real life? I feel like I witnessed them in an online vacuum of some kind. I can tell you, like, I don't know any clients in my practice that like our conversations around the world ending and bunkers being built and needing to hoard Neosporin and, gold. Like that wouldn't be the right fit for me to work with. And I wouldn't really know why they're coming to talk to a financial advisor in the first place. Does the business really need to concern themselves with, the uber pessimist? It just seems to me that it's a hard pass on like even giving them attention and focus on people who would be your customers or clients. They're just an interesting species altogether. I think they are highly entertaining. And there wouldn't be there wouldn't be perma bulls without perma bears. So
yeah, it's just interesting to me because it's gotten to the point, whether real or perceived in narrative, that you have people like Mark Andreessen, posting long diatribes against, the D cells, as we call them. You have people like Beth Jesus, who's a pseudo anonymous account on Twitter, who's basically just like he's a tech equivalent of the permabull, buy the S&P, everything's going to be good, keep compounding, like that sort of character, but for tech. And the fact that we have them, and
abbreviation, the E/ACC.
EACC, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a new thing, because really up until recently, tech has kind of been the underdog, and now tech is just another boring part of corporate America. Sorry, I don't think it's boring, but it's not like like FANG is new, right? Like it's like millennials are old. We've been doing the internet for a while, so it's not this disruptor thing anymore. It's another part of corporate America.
No, it is. It still is. It's just like we're late stage capitalism vibes, and product focused. You got $3,500 Vision Pros out there now. Would Steve Jobs ever let a product like that out there? We don't know. We'll never know. But like, it's so wrapped up in the product side of things, but tech will forever be cool. Can you imagine not believing or thinking like tech isn't the future? Like, I just don't understand people like that. It's like, no, let's invest in Harley Davidson because, boomer motorcycles are coming back with leather chaps. Like, I'm shocked the business is still around. Like, I'd rather be investing in semiconductors and microprocessors than anything like boomer nostalgia. I just don't see how that's a viable future for growth. Whereas virtually everything on the AI side, on the computational side, anything having to do, with bits and bytes is obviously the pathway into the world in which we're going to live in down the future. Dare I say, biotech still hasn't even I know biotech, Adam. I know it gets you triggered. We won't go there. But it still hasn't had its day in my mind. Like we're just kind of getting there with mRNA type stuff. The world seemed the coolness is, and that's why I guess there's these, perma bull tech people now, is because they're starting to see all the stuff they dreamt of, as 90s kids, starting to come into real life here. And it's super exciting. I'm stoked for it. And if you're going to follow the money, that's where the money is going. You got Nvidia at, $2 trillion market cap within like 4 nanoseconds. It's insanity. And don't read too far into, me pointing out that particular issue here, but like, it's a good example of just, where the money and energy is going.
Totally. And I wrote a blog post on this the other day, how a Quake player in the late 90s could have been like, hey, these 3D graphics have gotten pretty good. Wow, Nvidia just bought 3DFX. I have a 3DFX chip in my computer. I should buy, $5,000 worth of this stock, which would be worth over 1.2 million now. So it's like the future was kind of already here.
Oh man, I loved that post so much. And as a kid whose literally favorite game was Quake, and if you go before that in software, it was Wolfenstein and Doom, and then Quake comes out. But really what did it for me is like when you could buy a graphic card and take advantage of OpenGL, and all of a sudden like pixels were rounded, dynamic lighting was a thing in a game, and you had mouse look. For all my gamers out there, from the 90s, all the things I'm saying right here. Man, I wish I had that next order of intelligence to be like, how do I put money in that? right? Because that to me was so defining of where maybe things were going from a video. Like you did that article, that post justice. And I think it makes you and I like kick ourselves. Like, why wasn't there someone that I texted you that morning? I'm like, why didn't anyone pull me aside and be like, hey, like you can allocate money to this and invest.
Yeah.
So,
Well, our parents shouldn't have moved to South Florida and should have stayed at a tech hub, and we would have probably had the right mentorship. In my school growing up, I set up a LAN in our computer lab just to play Quake. Like I figured out all the ports and everything, and installed Quake on all the machines and got past their firewall, which was the easiest thing to get past. And so, but the benefits of this are now you're really good at online marketing, analytics, everything digital. So you have that skill set and you had it early. So I'm not going to feel bad for you, Doug.
No, I appreciate that. It's certainly, that early indoctrination to computers, you got, this is very, very well covered with Bill Gates. He went to one of the few schools in California that had access to computers, and it for him sparked the, with his intellect and access to computers, boom. By no stretch of the imagination, comparing myself there, but certainly an early indoctrination to computers. And for me, it was PC gaming, has undoubtedly served me well in my professional endeavors.
So speaking of technology and finance, I want to briefly get your take on what happened with Wendy's this week. So if you're not aware, Wendy's announced variable surge pricing like you'd have in an Uber for busy times, to be able to charge more for users for, a hamburger or Frosty or whatever. And it was basically wholesale made fun of, rejected. People were aghast, and rightfully so, with how inequality is spiraling in America. It's a real thing. Even though there are more people prospering there than ever, there are also more people who feel like they can't level up than ever. And I guess my question to you on this, Doug, is how does a brand like that announce something that to you and me is clearly going to get a lot of negativity and hate for your brand in the marketplace, tied to financials, and be so removed from the fact that, especially their core user base, a lot of them are going to take it negatively. And you're someone that works at the intersection of finance and branding. So you should be especially like, wow, Wendy's, this beloved brand. Why would they torch their reputation? Why wouldn't they just raise prices? Like, this seems like extra dystopian. I don't know what your take is on this.
It obviously does come off bad, right? Like that's why it's getting memed to death, not because people thought this was funny or cute or great and novel. They thought like, holy crap, like you guys are going to gouge me. Like a
single mom trying to get a lunch on the way to, her second job has to pay $30.
Nobody wants to know that their, dank spicy chicken sandwich just got jacked up $7. It's not, it's dank. It's not that dank. We can debate who's got the best spicy chicken sandwich out there, but I think when you have organizations as large as a Wendy's, right? Okay, so everyone knows like they have a cheeky, social media, account that has this notoriety to it, and I think people maybe think, wow, they're brilliant at marketing just because there's someone dropping bombs on Twitter. But decisions like that, go through finance departments, marketing teams, run it all the way up the chain. And you see organizations make really stupid decisions all the time. All it takes is one person, high up enough to believe that this is like a really good thing, and someone not paying attention above them, to push it through, or a bunch of yes people around the particular person to be like, yeah, that sounds really good. Let's do that. Let's run with that. Or maybe boredom set in. I don't know. I would love to have been a fly on the wall in the room where like the person was like, we're going to do surge pricing. And everyone's like, yeah, like, let's do it. And sure enough, it happened. Then all of a sudden they get smacked with a trout for doing it. We'll never be in those rooms, but that's usually in my mind how it goes. It's just like someone concocted a plan. Someone wasn't paying attention. It got approved. Everyone around them was like, well, the boss is always right. They roll it out and they find out it's awful. And then whatever EVP that should have been paying attention, finally sees how bad it's being received. They're like, oh crap, like this was a bad idea. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? It's like, yeah, we had a whole meeting around it, but you were getting a phone call from your kid's school that they needed to be picked up. So
yeah, I've consulted for QSRs in the past, so I have been in some of those rooms, and even I was surprised by that idea. Usually the discussions are around things like menu items, or I was actually in one brainstorm session about the ketchup packets. There's like a heated discussion amongst all the franchisees of the style of ketchup packet, and that's the type of thing they usually get involved in. Of course, pricing as well, but it was, that one seemed like, I don't know if they had some SaaS, like ex-SaaS consultants, or McKinsey was responsible, but I've seen a pattern of this lately, not just with QSRs, but with Bud Light, for example. It seems like there was just, they're making these weird bets for this like really small piece of return that have like the risk reward is not there anyway, even if it did work out. It's almost like I think it's, a lot of people are fully abstracted from their users. They're so far removed here, and they live in such a bubble that they don't see a problem with it. And like you said, there's yes men or women the whole way down.
And now you can't do anything about it. You've already harmed your brand and reputation when you should maybe have just increased the price of that spicy chicken sandwich by like 50 cents or 25 cents. Now what are you going to be like, never mind, but we're going to now increase the price by 50 cents. And now you look bad twice.
I think large corporations, to a good extent, frustrate a lot of competent people, and also kind of people who aren't consensus thinkers, like that won't just go along with everything, and they eventually, like, there's probably some calculus around when a company gets to a certain size or a certain type of management is in charge, they also lose the kind of iconoclast, or I think at this point, just normal thinkers. I think a lot of times, like, if you could just be like a normal centrist thinker, you're almost already an iconoclast now, because everyone's brains are so politically bork left or right, that if you could like sit through and have just be like, hey, this kind of doesn't make sense from first principles. Like, there's not that many of those people that are in the rank and file at some of these brands. I mean, we saw this recently with Google, and I have friends that work there, and I think a lot of them, the other thing, and this is financial, a lot of them get a good enough paycheck that they don't want to rock the boat. Like, they know something's weird, but it's just, there's no upside for them to say anything. So I wonder what it would take to just get a little bit more sanity into corporate America, so we can stop seeing weird things happen. I don't know if that's going to stop, or everything's just going to get weirder.
Also, like, no one's going to remember this Wendy surge pricing thing in like a week.
People remember the Bud Light thing. If you look at the impact on sales, it's like their brand is pretty torched.
Yeah, they really, really put a spear through the chest of their core demographic here. I'm not sure that's on the scale of like Wendy is suggesting they're going to roll out surge pricing for nugs.
No, but that's an addictive product. Like, their users can literally be addicted to it. And I mean, I guess there's, infinite choice in the market for beer, but the point notwithstanding is, I think companies should take everything much less cavalier.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree with that. Also, just like, make sure the communication policy is within your firm. Like, it's worth checking in on them every now and then to make sure things like this, don't happen. Dude, it's fast food. It's fast food, not a car share service. Like, I don't know. Moving on.
Yeah. All right, Doug, we'll do some lightning round topics just to get your takes on things. And I know you have interesting thoughts on most areas. So, depending on the day in media, the narrative is either millennials are financially hosed or millennials are rich. What's really going on here? I like don't know what to believe anymore.
Oh, you got to set yourself up for Gen Z as financially hosed. So you got to pivot millennials out of them being financially hosed and being somewhat all right. Remember, there was a day where it was like, it was never one or the other. It was just millennials. I built an entire brand and firm around this narrative because I was so against the narrative. I was like, we're not hosed, guys. We're off to a very rough start because of 08 and 09. Like in 10 years, we'll be doing all right. We'll have scars to show for it. And now it's, you're seeing those narratives show up like, oh, look, they're all right. They made it out of, a decade later, plus they made it out of this absolute massive hole we've created for them by blowing up the entire economy. And now we have to get ready for the next. I think what I've learned is like, you're only in your 20s for so long before now I'm knocking 40. I started this whole millennial thing in my 20s, and millennials aren't, the kids in the room anymore. It's now Gen Z. And then millennials I have kids, like Gen Alpha, whatever they're called. So you got to get ready for the new narratives with the next people. And if it's going to be some doomer, like you're broke, poor, never going to make it, they're not as well off as, the generation before them, you got to go down to the next generation. So we're just setting up whatever version of that's going to be for, Gen Z, like, oh, they're all woke, or they all, don't have any people skills, all of these things, they can't even work in a work environment, whatever, the expression, the kids are all right, usually comes to mind here. Like, they're the first generation that will be 100%, digital natives. They've never lived in a world that was analog. Millennials are super cool and special because we're the only generation that actually can appreciate, both sides. We're digital natives, and we remember, an analog world. We had childhoods that weren't ruined, if not, it depends on which side of the coin you want, ruined or made more awesome by the internet. I mean, for me, made more awesome, for some Gen Z out there, being fully plugged in all the time will have its advantages and disadvantages. So I don't know, man. Millennials, I think it's more commentary on the country, of haves and have-nots. There's probably, I know there are plenty in the generation that, have never fully recovered from, their earlier days of adulthood. And then there are those who managed to get through that and thrive. So yeah, it could very well be split between these two modalities here.
Thanks. I appreciate your thoughts on that. As marketers, it's up to us to understand the parts of generation narrative that can be useful to tell a story. Whether it's actually pure astrology or not almost doesn't matter for a marketer creating a narrative to try to sell something. Hopefully it's honest and not pandering, and maybe uniting everyone around, a shared moment in time. And that's okay. Not just trying to create strife between the generations. I'm guilty of that sometimes on my blog, but with good intention. I try and psyop people to the right side of issues. Other topics to go through and lightning round. Is crypto a boring topic now? Bitcoin is the time of talking and recording this is like 60K. Who knows where it'll be when we publish. And it seems like, there's a Bitcoin ETF right now. And it almost seems like, the institutions are like, look, this is fine. It should exist. And so I guess for marketers, what should they be thinking? You're in finance, so you're upstream of what marketers will hear about crypto later when, finance people are like, we need this as payments or whatnot. So what's your take on that?
It's just beginning. I mean, look, I'm an OG Bitcoiner and, mined Bitcoin a year. I've been checking the price throughout our time here together, just because it's somewhat mooning over the last few days here. You have supply about to be constrained with the halving, and throughout some technical stuff here, the ETFs, 9 of them now, are having to go out and buy Bitcoin. On the institutions have to buy it on the open market when no one's selling. So like, this is really a super exciting, era for Bitcoiners here after a 3-year bear market. We're back, baby. Have fun staying poor. Like, I hate all of these expressions, by the way. I'm only saying them to be ironic. But I think if you're a marketing department, you need to pay attention to this. Like, NFTs will be back. Like, wasn't thrilled the first foray into that was like monkey JPEGs that, were deemed to have artistic quality. I don't know about that, but like the whole idea of owning work or approving work digitally and having ownership over it, like, and staking and all of these mechanics, I think will be mainstay things that, you're just not going to have to think about them. They'll just be embedded in the app, or the software that you're using here. Like nobody wants to go to an exchange, buy a token, move that token over to another, Web3 application to go secure and prove that thing. Like, come on, that's the worst UI UX ever. You just want to go in the app, pick the thing you want, swipe, boom, done. It's yours. All the hard work is done. You need some currency. You need to exchange fiat into a digital currency. Cool. Go in the app, select what you want. Boom, your bank does it, whoever. I think we'll see a resurgence of all this. I think it's very early innings. Bitcoin has always been the one to kind of lead the way and catch the attention of the masses. The fact that my stepmother-in-law is watching the price of Bitcoin because she knows I'm a holder, and is hitting me up on my text like, hey, look at that. What's that show you? I mean, people are paying more and more attention. It's just we really haven't created too many easy on-ramps into it. And all of that will be changing over the next 10 years, if not sooner. So don't ignore it. Don't sleep on it. Please, for the love of God, don't. I'm not telling you go out there, obviously as an investment advisor, I can't do that, but I'm not telling people like, oh, but I've been known to say like, look, if you haven't messed with something in this space, like go buy $1 worth of, crypto. Like go buy $5 worth of Bitcoin. So you can say that you've trusted a trustless system for the first time in your life, that you've, experimented with a digital wallet for the first time in your life, that you've played the DeFi, that you've played in the DeFi arena, because I think you're going to, regardless of, your attitudes and feelings towards it. A lot of the traditional finance apparatus will be adopting the technology of decentralized finance, whether that's through stable coins or just through the use of blockchain technology. I sound like I know what I'm talking about here, but just, again, there's nothing, it's pretty much a free lunch to like go experiment. Anytime someone says, hey, you can experiment with like new technology that probably will find itself in your everyday life and you can do it ahead of like mainstream indoctrination, go do it. Like, go do it. Don't be the person that's like, oh, I'm not going to buy a CD burner. We'll never use that. No, buy the burner. Go put all your favorite songs on a CD and listen to them in your car, hell back to like 2002 here, like whatever.
People wanted to pay me to burn them CDs in high school. I definitely could have set up a huge pirating business.
Yeah, dude, we all did that. And any techno dork from, the early 2000s, and you'll find someone who got $10 for 10 tracks on a CD. Come on.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I don't think any marketer listening shouldn't try new technology. I think what really matters is for you to implement it in a way that makes sense for your users. So you should use everything and figure it out, and then understand how and when and why that would translate into the business in a way that, is going to delight your users and not in a way that is going to cause people to hate you. So
yeah, like imagine you're Starbucks and you're like, we have the Starbucks NFTs now. It's like, I'm like, wow, this is so not native to Starbucks. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Like, I think that, they missed the boat. I was thinking like, wow, a universal coffee reward system that like functions on the blockchain. Like, you'll see something. Like, just know that was my idea. I don't have the time or resources to like see it through, and one day you'll see it and I'll kick myself for not having built that $1 billion business.
All right, Doug. Well, thank you for coming on today. We're getting to the hour. So where can our listeners find and connect with you online?
I appreciate it. Yeah, all handles are at Doug Boneparth. You can check out the firm website. It's Bonafide Wealth, BONE. Please, we write an awesome newsletter. It's a family business, family firm. My wife and I, pretty much on a weekly basis, write the joint account over on Beehive. It's a great newsletter for helping couples talk about money. So if you and your significant other want to get better at talking about things money related, you're definitely going to want to subscribe to that. Otherwise, yeah, you can just go hit me up on social media. There's a link tree. It gets you to all these places.
Awesome. And we will put links to where you can find and connect with Doug in the podcast description. Once again, thank you for joining this week's episode. And please like, comment, and share. We will see you next week.